There are those who fly and those who fall. Sanguinius did both. Before the galaxy burned, before the darkness spread its wings across 10,000 worlds, there was light. It did not come from stars, nor from gods. It came from a man with wings of alabaster, eyes like morning suns, and a soul too bright for the age into which he was born. They called him Sanguinius, the angel, the brightest one, the slayer of demons, and the most beloved of all the emperor's sons. But names are only echoes, and echoes lie. He was not born among nobles, nor raised in the silken chambers of a gilded world. His first breath was drawn on Baal Secundus, a planet of rust, poison, and desolation, a place where even the dust was venom, and the wind cut skin like shattered glass. Baal was no cradle. It was a crucible, and the child who fell from the skies bore wings upon his back, like the Ceres of lost myth, yet was greeted not with awe, but with terror. The tribes of Baal were starving remnants of once human clans, barely held together by scraps of memory and savagery. To them, the winged infant was a sign, either a curse or a god. Some worshipped him, others hunted him, but the boy was more than legend. He was a Primarch, and even as a babe, death passed over him like shadow before flame. He grew faster than any child should. His mind was sharp, aware, like something ancient watching through newborn eyes. By the time he could walk, he could speak. By the time he could speak, he led, he healed the sick. He fought monsters with bare hands. His presence turned chaos into unity. Where he walked, the carrion tribes knelt. Where he spoke, bloodshed ceased. In a land ruled by starvation, he brought discipline. In a sky choked by fallout, he gave hope. His wings were not just symbols. They were salvation. But Baal was not kind. Radiation storms swept through the wastes like ghost fire. Mutants, bloated and howling, crawled from underground vaults. Even as he led, the angel bled. He never stopped, never rested. He fought to protect those who feared him. And when the last of Baal's great threats rose, the scorched Abuarim, a leviathan of burning flesh and black bone, Sanguinius slew alone, wrapped in fire, broken blade in hand. He walked from its corpse as his people wept, not in fear, but in reverence. That was when the sky changed. A storm of golden light split the heavens. A ship descended, silent and immense. The tribes fell to their knees, whispering prayers to forgotten gods. But Sanguinius did not kneel. He knew it would come, not from stories, not from dreams, but from the blood in his veins. The man who stepped from the ship was tall, armored in gold, crowned with stars. His eyes held centuries. His voice silenced oceans. The emperor of mankind had come to claim his son. And Sanguinius, the angel of Baal, looked upon him and smiled. There was no war, no trial, no resistance. The angel knew where he belonged. He knelt only once in his life, and it was then he swore allegiance, not from fear nor awe, but love. In that moment, something ancient stirred, a bond not a command, but of soul. The emperor had found many sons by then, scattered across a galaxy in chaos. But none like this. None so noble, so brilliant, so terrifying their purity. Among all his children, only one never once fell out of his favor. Only one reminded him of what could have been. From that day, Sanguinius did not walk the wastelands of Baal alone. He flew across the stars, golden and burning, carrying the hopes of his people like a banner. Given command of the 9 Legion, the Blood Angels, he turned them from a cursed and fractured host into a brotherhood of unmatched grace and wrath. Where once they had suffered from madness and mutation, under his gaze, they became artists of war, poets of death. Their blades sang, their banners wept, and wherever the angel led them, worlds surrendered not just in fear, but in awe. Yet even then, the shadows stirred. For the galaxy does not love the noble, it feeds on them. Sanguinius bore his burdens silently. He knew something slept within him, a darkness inherited, perhaps, from the warp's caress when the Primarchs were scattered. Visions came to him, dreams of a future soaked in blood, of a war master's betrayal, of his own death. He saw himself fall, not in battle, but by the hand of one he called brother. He spoke of it to none but the Emperor, and in return received only silence. Still, he did not falter. Every war was fought as if it were his last. Every moment with his legion was a gift he held tightly. He laughed often, but his eyes never did, and always the dreams returned. The whispers of wings torn, of a throne drenched in red, of Horus rising against the light. None believed it then. None saw the seeds. But Sanguinius did, and he never turned away. The angel stood beside the Emperor at the height of the Great Crusade. He fought at Ullanor. He pacified Cygnus Prime. His name was sung across 1,000 worlds. Yet he remained humble, a servant of humanity, a guardian of beauty in a galaxy growing ever more cruel. He was light in a storm that never ceased. But light cannot burn forever. The cracks were forming. Trust was fading. The legions began to drift apart. And Horus, once first among brothers, changed. Sanguinius saw it, felt it, the way love turned to ambition, the way loyalty soured into pride. He warned others. They did not listen. He watched his brothers fracture, Kurz descending into horror, Angron into rage, Fulgrim into vanity. He mourned each one, yet carried no hate. Only sorrow, always sorrow. That was his curse. He loved them all, even when they became monsters. Especially then. There was no fanfare, no final warning. The heresy broke like a tidal wave, sudden, merciless, blinding. Horus turned. The legions burned. Terror was threatened. And through it all, the angel stood defiant. This is not yet that tale. Not yet the siege, nor the death, nor the silence to come. This is the story of a man who flew in spite of gravity, who bore beauty like a wound, who loved a father who could not return it, and brothers who would tear him apart. This is Sanguinius. And the galaxy was never worthy of him. Every light casts a shadow. Every angel bears a wound. And in Sanguinius, the wound bled brightest. Beneath the purity, beneath the wings, beneath the haloed visage that gave hope to billions, there was something darker, something primal. The flaw was not of flesh, but of fate. From the beginning, Sanguinius knew what he was. Not merely a warrior, not simply a symbol, but a vessel, a bearer of legacy and prophecy. The Emperor had designed the Primarchs as perfect instruments of conquest, genetic demigods to lead humanity into a golden age. But perfection cannot be flung through the warp without consequence. The birthright of Sanguinius, like his brothers, came stained. There was a madness that whispered in his blood. No one saw it at first, not even the angel himself. The 9 Legion had already been shaped by tragedy before he arrived. During the earliest campaigns of the Great Crusade, the Blood Angels were notorious for their unrelenting fury, their thirst for battle. They conquered with artistry, but behind that artistry was a hunger, something deeper than loyalty, more feral than discipline, a craving for slaughter that left even hardened imperial commanders uneasy. And in battle, their eyes sometimes burned too red. Their laughter echoed too long. It was called the Red Thirst. Some said it was psychological, the product of too many violent campaigns, of trauma baked into their culture. Others whispered darker things, that it was in their gene seed, that it was part of the angel himself. When Sanguinius took command of the 9 Legion, he recognized the signs instantly, because he too had heard the voice beneath the rage. He too had felt the pulse of blood in his ears, the moment before the kill, the terrible temptation to let go, to not be the angel, but the beast. But he never surrendered. Where another Primarch might have purged the afflicted or buried the truth, Sanguinius embraced them, not in blindness, but in love. He did not hide the red thirst. He fought it. He taught his sons to do the same, to master it, to hold it like a dagger to their own throats, always reminding them what they could become. And they followed him, not because they feared him, but because he understood them. They were killers, yes, but under him they became more. The Blood Angels learned to take pride not in the kill, but in the restraint, in the grace of battle, in the beauty that could still be found, even in death. They painted their armor in red, not for blood, but for redemption. And when they wept openly, for every life taken, for every brother lost. No other legion fought like them. None could, but the flaw did not stop there. There was another curse, deeper still. It came not as rage, but as prophecy, the Black Rage, a madness that struck without warning. When it came, it shattered the mind utterly. A warrior would scream the name of Horus, cry out for the Emperor, and fall into a frenzy of unstoppable violence, not from hatred, but from memory, because in that moment, they were no longer themselves. They were Sanguinius, reliving his final moments, seeing through his eyes the betrayal, the death, the fall. This was the cruelest part of the angel's legacy. The Black Rage would not manifest until long after his death, but its roots were already there, planted in the soul of the Legion, waiting for the final wound that would break them. Sanguinius knew. He did not know how or when, but he felt it in every vision, in every dream. The future was a river of blood, and he was its source. He never spoke of it to his sons, never revealed the truth, but he carried it, always, and yet he smiled, always smiled. His pain became his strength, his sorrow a shield for others. He walked among his legion not as a god, but as a brother. He embraced each of them, knew their names, celebrated their victories, mourned their deaths. There were many who claimed to be loyal, many who claimed to love mankind, but Sanguinius lived that love in every breath. He visited hospitals after campaigns, holding the hands of dying civilians. He knelt beside wounded serfs, blessing them not with miracles, but with presence. His warriors spoke of his warmth like a fire in winter, a calm that made them believe they were more than killers. But even this drew envy. Among his brothers, Sanguinius was a paradox. Horus, the war master, envied his grace. Lorgar, the zealot, resented his purity. Angron could not comprehend his restraint. Conrad Kurz feared him, not for his might, but because Sanguinius saw through him into the abyss. Even Guilliman, the paragon of order, admitted that none could inspire like the angel could, that none could lead so purely. But admiration is a double-edged blade, and jealousy is the slowest poison. When Horus fell, it was not just ambition that drove him. It was the wound of being overlooked, of knowing that, had the Emperor chosen differently, it would have been Sanguinius bearing the mantle of War Master. The angel would have united the legions without force, would have brought peace with truth, not fear. Horus knew it, and it broke him. In the end, perhaps that was why he hated Sanguinius most, because the angel still loved him. Sanguinius never raised his voice against Horus, never cursed him. Even when the heresy began, even when the skies burned and entire legions turned traitor, he clung to the hope that Horus could be saved, that the brother he had once laughed with, bled beside, could return. That hope would kill him. But we are not there yet. There is more to be said of the Legion, of their triumphs, of the brotherhood that stood like fire against the coming dark. The Blood Angels fought in 1,000 campaigns under Sanguinius. They broke the back of the Orc Empire at Dyson, liberated the Ash Worlds of Naraka, held the pass of Elenia with 25 men against 3 legions of heretics. Each time, the angel led from the front, his wings spread, his sword a comet of righteous wrath. He fought not to kill, but to end the killing. They say he once stopped an enemy's heart with a gaze, that he walked through flames without burning, that he forgave a traitor seconds before cleaving his head from his shoulders. Every story contradicts another. Every myth says more about the speaker than the man. But one thing is always the same. He never hesitated, not in war, not in love, not in sacrifice. The darkness knew his name. It feared it, and it had every reason to. Because even as the angel bled, he did not fall. Not yet. What is betrayal, if not love turned inside out? There was a time, before the knives, before the fire, before the name Horus became a curse, when they stood together beneath alien stars and laughed like brothers. Not merely comrades, but kin. There was trust in that bond. Trust built through war and sacrifice, forged in the crucible of 1,000 dying suns. Sanguinius and Horus, the angel and the war master. And for a fleeting moment in the long agony of time, it was beautiful. Horus Lupercal had been the first found, the favored son. He was charisma incarnate, ambitious, bold, unbreakable. A leader whose voice could still a riot or start one. He earned his place. He bore the title of War Master with pride, not entitlement. And Sanguinius, though beloved in equal measure by the Emperor, bore him no envy. Where others whispered of rivalries, of succession and favoritism, the angel offered loyalty, pure, unshaken, absolute. They fought together in the great compliance of Melchior, where Zeno's necromancers turned entire populations into living artillery. It was Sanguinius who pierced the heart of their eldritch god machine, and Horus who held the line. They stood shoulder to shoulder as equals, not competitors. In the conquest of Yeren, it was the angel who wept over the deaths of children used as psychic batteries, and Horus who laid a hand on his shoulder and said, "This is why we must never stop." In those days, Horus still meant it. But even then, the seeds of tragedy had begun to bloom. The Emperor withdrew from the front lines, returned to Terra to pursue his secret work, the construction of the Webway Project, a hidden path through the warp that would make humanity independent of the navigators, the warp tides, and even the ruinous powers. He said nothing. He gave no explanation. He named Horus War Master and vanished into silence. And silence is where rot takes root. The other Primarchs questioned, Guilliman in quiet frustration, Perturabo in simmering disdain, Angron with howls, and Lorger, always the preacher, always the seeker of meaning, began to hear voices in the void. Horus did not fall alone. The gods of chaos knew how to unmake a soul, not by force, but by whisper. They showed him lies, half-truths, wounds twisted into omens, visions of the Emperor ascending to godhood without his sons, of betrayal, of abandonment, and in the heart of the warp, at the Serpent Temple on Davin, they gave him a choice. He took it, and the galaxy bled. But Sanguinius did not believe. Not at first. Not even when the War Master turned his guns on loyal worlds. Not even when brothers died, screaming beneath the banners of madness. He could not. Horus had been his closest kin, his mirror. To believe in his fall was to believe in the death of everything they had fought for. When the news reached him on the edge of the galactic rim, at the fringes of the Cygnus cluster, he was not surprised. He was broken. But even then, he hoped. It was Cygnus Prime that shattered that hope forever. The Blood Angels had received a call. An urgent distress signal from the Imperium. Reports of demonic incursions. civilian slaughter, an entire region begging for deliverance. The message bore all the correct encryption, the Imperium's own seal. And so Sanguinius took his fleet, his entire legion, and dove into the heart of the trap. It was no war zone. It was a lie. The Cygnus cluster had already fallen. Long ago, the message had been forged. The voices had been false. And waiting in the black was not a planet in need, but a demon prince of the blood god, a being named Kabanda, high servant of Khorne. There are horrors in the galaxy that cannot be described, only endured. What waited for the blood angels at Cygnus was not war. It was a theater of torment. Worlds twisted into altars. Skies bled fire. Oceans screamed. The very gravity writhed like a wounded beast. Demons poured forth in legions, howling the names of Primarchs with voices not their own. And the blood angels, pure of purpose, unmatched in discipline, broke. The red thirst surged through them like wildfire. Every restraint, every lesson, every oath, the warp ripped them from within. They became berserkers, howling angels of death. And Sanguinius, for the first time in his life, was powerless to stop them. He fought Kabanda in orbit above Cygnus Prime, blade against axe, wings against wings. The demon mocked him, revealed the truth. Horus had sent this gift, this trial, this first taste of their own damnation. Sanguinius fell that day. Kabanda shattered the bones of his wings, drove him from the skies like a meteor, cast him down onto the blasted surface of Cygnus like Icarus brought low. But even broken, even bleeding, even as his sons lost themselves to madness and horror, Sanguinius rose. He drove his sword through Kabanda's chest, banished the creature back to the warp. And in that moment, in that crucible of agony and revelation, he made a vow. Horus was lost. There would be no saving him, no redemption, only judgment. The blood angels left Cygnus in silence, not as saviors, not as victors, but as cursed things, marked forever by what they had endured. The Legion would never be whole again. The red thirst had deepened, and now the black rage had begun. Some of his sons began to see visions, not dreams, memories of a future not yet written, of terror burning, of a golden palace under siege, of the angel dying in a throne room soaked in betrayal. They called out, fought phantoms, tore at their own armor. Sanguinius watched them fall, one by one, and said nothing. What could he say? He knew. He had always known, but he could not stop. There was no time left. The heresy was no longer a rebellion. It was a cataclysm, and terror would burn if he did not stand in the way. So he flew, broken-winged, cursed, defiant, not for vengeance, for love, for the Emperor, for a galaxy that no longer deserved him, and for a brother who had already crossed the point of no return. The sky above Terra was still unbroken, the palace still untouched by fire, but in the void beyond the stars, death was already moving. Horus had split the Imperium like a butcher's blade through flesh, and the loyalist legions, fragmented, isolated, reeling, struggled to gather. Every second lost was another system devoured by madness, and Sanguinius was trapped. After the atrocity at Cygnus, the blood angels emerged crippled, not in numbers. They remained a mighty force, but in soul, the warp had not simply tested them. It had marked them. The red thirst, once a shadow on the edge of consciousness, now howled in their minds like a storm, and the black rage had begun to claim its first sons. They did not sleep. They screamed, fought phantoms, lived and relived moments not yet past. They saw visions of a golden throne room, of a shattered man in golden armor, of the angel's corpse broken before a traitor's throne. These were not dreams. They were memories yet to happen. Time twisted by the warp, had cracked open their future and let them bleed into it. And Sanguinius watched, powerless. He walked the decks of the Red Tier, his flagship, visiting his sons in silence. They wept at his presence. Some begged for death. Others clung to him like children lost in a nightmare. He gave them neither mercy nor comfort, only presence. It was all he had left. But even then, even in the shadow of doom, he did not lose himself. He called a council aboard the Red Tier, gathering his officers and captains. And what they saw was not a broken demigod, but fire refusing to go out. His wings, shattered by Kabanda, had been bound in sacred iron and crimson silk. He could no longer fly, but he stood tall. His eyes burned with certainty. "We are not lost," he said. "We are not damned. We are weapons forged for light, and I will not break." There was no plan to return directly to Terra. The warp would not allow it. The tides twisted. The routes collapsed. But there was another beacon, another gathering storm that called to him. Ultramar, Robot Gilliman, had survived the opening blows of the heresy and carved out a bulwark in the eastern fringe. It was there that Sanguinius set course, dragging his bloodied legion across a sea of demons and madness, through voids that screamed his name. Every system passed bore the mark of Horus. Massacres, civil war, starships gutted and drifting like corpses in the dark. He gave aid where he could, burned what could not be saved, and pressed on. In Mackridge, he found his brother. Gilliman, ever the architect, had established Imperium Secundus, an emergency empire, a fallback to preserve humanity should Terra fall. It was a plan born of pragmatism and despair. Sanguinius refused to accept it. "We cannot abandon Terra," he said, before the thrones of Imperium Secundus. "The Emperor is still alive. As long as he draws breath, we fight." Gilliman argued. Their brother Lionel Johnson, who had also arrived, supported the cold logic of fallback, but Sanguinius would not yield. And then the message came, a pulse from the Astronomicon, a light, however faint, from Terra. It was enough. The beacon still burned. The Emperor still lived. Sanguinius knelt before it, tears in his eyes. The Imperium was not dead. Not yet. He turned to his brothers. "We return." But there was a problem. No passage through the warp could be trusted, not without sacrifice, not without risk so vast that even Gilliman, Master Warder, hesitated. Sanguinius did not. He led his fleet alone, took the Blood Angels into the storm once more. And this time it was not merely the warp that sought to stop him, but destiny itself. What followed was a gauntlet no sane mind could chart. Real space collapsed around them. Time bent. Stars died and were born in moments. The black rage surged like wildfire through the fleet. Entire companies fell to it, reliving the death of their gene father before it ever came. Some locked themselves in cells, screaming his name. Others vanished into the warp, never to be seen again. Sanguinius walked among them, touched them, calmed them when he could. But he was fading, not in strength, in time. He knew it now. There was no escaping it. The future he had seen since Baal, the death, the betrayal, the golden halls soaked in red, was not just possible. It was inevitable. But inevitability is not the same as surrender. He began to write, not orders, not strategy, letters to each of his captains, to the men he called sons. Personal, honest, full of love. He thanked them, praised them, wept for them, and then he wrote one final letter, folded it, sealed it in black wax. To the Emperor, its contents are unknown. No record remains. But when Malkador the Sigillite read it, he did not speak for hours. And when the Emperor took it in his hands, it is said, he wept. They arrived at Terra not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as revenants. The red tier descended through a burning sky, past shattered fleets and shrieking debris, into a world on fire. The siege had begun, and the angel had come home, but home had changed. The imperial palace was a fortress of desperation. The emperor's children, those who remained, were haggard, broken, and scattered. Rogel Dorn manned the defenses with the grim resolve of a dying mountain. Malcador whispered secrets in the shadows. The custodians patrolled like angels at war. And above it all, the emperor waited. When Sanguinius stood before him once more, no words were spoken. They simply looked at each other. Father and son, creation and perfection, doom and love. And though none heard what passed between them, all knew it was goodbye. The angel had returned, but he would not leave again. The siege of Terra was not war. It was extinction played slow. A death dance of titans around a throne built to outlive gods. The traitor legions had come. Legions who once marched beneath banners of unity now drowned in corruption, their names howled by demons. The sky above Terra was gone, replaced by fire. The void swarmed with ruined ships and shrieking warp echoes. And at the heart of it, buried in layers of adamantium and myth, stood the imperial palace, last bastion of the dream called mankind. When Sanguinius landed, the air itself changed. The defenders felt it, a ripple, a breath, a presence that made even the hopeless stand tall. For they had heard the stories of the angel with wings like starlight, the warrior who made even monsters weep. And now he walked among them, a crimson blur beneath a torn sky, broken winged but unbowed. The angel took no rest, not for himself, not for his legion. He strode straight into war councils, blood still dry on his armor, and offered himself wholly to the defense. Rogel Dorn welcomed him with quiet relief. The two brothers, stone and fire, did not embrace. They had no time for such things. But there was a look between them, a silent agreement. We hold or we die. Sanguinius did not remain behind walls. He flew to the outer defenses when they were breached. He led charge after charge into enemy incursions. He stood at the Eternity Gate itself and held it with 2,000 warriors against a tide that should have drowned mountains. Kabanda returned during the siege, summoned through rites soaked in the blood of millions. But this time, the demon found no fragile angel. Sanguinius met him not in the air, but on the scorched flagstones of the palace walls. And when they clashed, the sky itself split. Kabanda roared with the fury of a god of war. But Sanguinius said nothing. He simply moved. Every strike was precision, every motion poetry. They fought for hours, fire and shadow locked in war song. At last, the angel took flight, wings mended enough to carry him. Just once, he drove his sword into the demon's spine and cast Kabanda down in a meteor of flame, shattering the great plaza beneath the Eternity Gate. It was said that when Kabanda's corpse struck the earth, the echo was heard across the globe, but it cost him. The wings would never truly heal, and Sanguinius would never fly again. He limped from the battlefield, blood painting his lips, and raised his sword high. "We still live," he whispered, and the legion roared. Within the walls, the blood angels became something more than warriors. They were avatars, icons. Their crimson armor, battered and scorched, became a symbol of defiance. Their presence steadied regiments that would have broken. Their songs, sung in the old tongue of Baal, carried through the ruins like hymns. But with every hour, the black rage took more of them. One by one, they fell not to wounds, but to memory, to visions of what had not yet occurred. They screamed the name of Horus. They begged for forgiveness. They died with their eyes fixed on something that was not there. Some clawed at the walls, tried to reach a throne they had never seen. Others fought like gods, killing until their hearts burst. Sanguinius mourned each one. He walked among the dying, held their hands, spoke their names. "You are forgiven," he whispered again and again. But the burden grew heavier. He knew the hour approached. The walls of the inner palace were cracking. The traitors pressed closer. The warp bled into reality. Demons shrieked down marble corridors that once held art and light. And then, from the void, the signal. The Vengeful Spirit, flagship of Horus Lupercal, lowered its shields. It was a challenge, a call, and the Emperor answered. He would go, not with armies, not with fleets, but with chosen few. Sanguinius was one of them. Dorn protested. The defenders begged him to stay. Terra needed him. His legion needed him. But the angel knew this was never about saving Terra. It was about confronting fate. He joined the teleportation strike without ceremony. No speech. No farewell. He simply walked to the golden portal, turned once to his sons, and smiled. Then he vanished. The Vengeful Spirit was no longer a ship. It was a wound in reality, a floating cathedral of rot and despair. Time fractured within its halls. Corpses walked. Memories screamed. Every corridor bled lies. The strike team was scattered. Malcador burned away, his power spent. Custodians died without glory. And Sanguinius, alone, found the War Master. They met not in a battlefield, but a sanctum, a throne room twisted by chaos, mockery of the Emperor's own. There was Horus, once a brother, now a god of decay and fire. The two did not fight immediately. They spoke. Some say Sanguinius begged him to return. Others say he wept, that he held out a hand, and Horus spat on it. What passed between them will never be known, but it ended in silence. Then came the battle. It was not long. It did not need to be. Sanguinius, brightest of all, knew he would die, knew he could not win, but he fought anyway. He fought because he had to, because someone had to show the galaxy that purity still had meaning, because he loved Horus once, and love, too, can kill. The angel struck first. Blade met Talon. Wings clashed against storm. Horus roared, lashing with the power of all four dark gods. He broke Sanguinius's blade, tore through his armor, shattered his ribs, and still Sanguinius rose. He bled from the mouth and smiled. Then silence. The blow came swift. The War Master's fist crushed the angel's chest, and the wings fell. But in that final moment, before death, before darkness, Sanguinius struck, not with sword, not with strength, but with light. He wounded Horus. Truly, deeply, for the first time. He made him mortal again. And that would be enough. The angel fell, alone, broken, silent, but not forgotten. For across the stars, every blood angel screamed. They saw it, felt it, and the black rage bloomed. The angel was dead, but the war was not over, and vengeance had just begun. When angels die, they do not vanish. They echo, they burn, and the galaxy cannot unsee them. There was no light when Sanguinius fell, only silence, the kind that follows catastrophe, the kind that breaks empires, the kind that seeps into every breath of the dying and tells them, the best of us is gone. His body was shattered, bent upon the throne room floor of the Vengeful Spirit. Blood pooled like wine beneath broken feathers. His eyes, once the stars of Baal, once the light that lifted 10,000 suns, were closed. But the wound he left, it did not close. The Emperor arrived minutes too late. The teleportation had scattered his strike team, warped by the dark god's laughter. Custodians and space marines died by the hundreds within the bowels of Horus's flagship, never even seeing the throne room. When the master of mankind at last arrived, alone, golden light rippling off his armor, he found the body of his son, and beside it, the War Master, They say Horus smiled then, blood-soaked, triumphant, radiant with the unholy blessing of the ruinous powers. He offered the emperor a kingdom, a share in his blasphemy, a seat beside a throne of bones. And the emperor, holding the lifeless body of the angel in his arms, said nothing. There was no rage, no scream, only the quiet unraveling of love. Then the duel began. It would be the last. Sanguinius did not witness the end, but he made it possible. His final act, his final blow, even as life fled his body, had pierced Horus's invincibility, had torn through the warp-forged veil that protected him. And so when the emperor rose to face his fallen son, he did so with the knowledge that the battle could be won. That knowledge was paid for in blood. Sanguinius's blood. The emperor triumphed, but at a price beyond comprehension. His body broken, his soul fractured, carried back to Terra by dawn. He would never speak again, never walk again. Entombed upon the golden throne, he became a god not of action, but of endurance, a machine to hold the gates of reality closed with sheer, unmoving will. And all of it began with the angel's fall. But Sanguinius did not die in memory. Not truly. His body was recovered. Through war zones, through flames, through the madness of the collapsing Vengeful Spirit, where the walls shrieked with demonic laughter and the air turned to ash. Custodians and blood angels gave their lives to bring him home. It was said the ship itself fought to keep him, clawing at reality to devour his remains. But they did not fail. They could not. They would not let him be lost to the void. They brought him back to Baal, to the scorched, red cradle of his beginning. And there, beneath the weeping skies, they entombed him, not in marble, not in gold, but in crystal, the life glass of Baal drawn from the planet's heart. His tomb is not a monument. It is a wound visible from orbit, a shrine and a promise. Every blood angel who looks upon it remembers, and bleeds, and weeps, for the blood angels did not die with their father. They changed. The black rage, once a whisper, once a shadow, now screamed in their veins. Entire companies lost themselves to it. Men who had served faithfully for centuries were consumed in days. They built the death company to contain them, a host of warriors marked for death, who would throw themselves into battle until the vision claimed them and death gave release. It is not a cure, it is a sentence. And with every battle, every fallen son, Sanguinius is relived again. His death is not history. It is present. It is the price of their breath. Some chapters might have hidden their flaws, purged their mad, buried their sins. But the blood angels chose differently. They made it sacred. They embraced their curse. They remembered him. Even in madness, they remember. On battlefields across the galaxy, where the sky burns and the dead pile high, a blood angel sometimes breaks from formation, eyes glazed, voice raw. He will cry out, not to the emperor, but to the angel, Sanguinius. And in that scream is a cathedral of grief. They see the golden halls. They see the War Master's betrayal. They feel their father's final breath. They are him for seconds, minutes, and then they fall, but never alone, because every blood angel, even those untouched by the rage, carry it with them. It defines them. It is their strength. It is their penance. Even their successors, chapters born of their gene seed, scattered across the stars, feel its echo, the flesh-tearers, who bleed rage like wildfire, the angels in Carmen, who weep before battle, the blood drinkers, haunted by the thirst more deeply than any others. Each carries a shard of the angel, each walks in shadow, yet none have fallen, not truly, because the memory of Sanguinius holds them, because his death was not surrender. It was choice, to love in the face of betrayal, to hope knowing it would be dashed, to die knowing it would save only silence. Even Gilliman, returned in the dark age of the Indomitus Crusade, said this. He was what we were meant to be. He was our example, and we failed him. The Imperium still bears a symbol. still sculpt his likeness on chapels and banners. He is worshipped by the ignorant, revered by the devout. But the blood angels do not need myth. They remember the man, the brother, the father, the angel who bled not just for victory, but for love. And that is why they endure. Not because they are strong, but because they were loved. Truly, wholly, unconditionally, by a being who deserved to ascend, and chose instead to fall. It did not end with his death. It began. The Emperor would not speak again. His breath now came through machines. His mind stretched across the veil, locked in a throne that devoured thousands of souls daily to keep the Astronomicon burning. And in the silence left behind, the Imperium grew loud. Loud with war, with ignorance, with the screams of bureaucrats and the chains of faith. The dream died. The corpse remained. But Sanguinius lived on, not in flesh, in blood. The red thirst spread like ink through parchment, subtle and insidious, a gnawing need that no longer whispered but hungered. Blood angels felt it daily, some more than others. A dry mouth, a pounding pulse, a vision of slaughter, so vivid it left them shaking. It was not a taste for blood. It was something deeper, a longing, a remembrance of the moment before the fall. It struck without warning, sometimes in battle, sometimes in prayer, sometimes in the stillness between wars, when no enemy screamed and no blade was drawn, when there was nothing but silence and the memory of wings. And the black rage, it grew worse. Some thought it might fade, that with the centuries the echo of his death would grow distant. But it did not. If anything, it became more precise, more real, as if time could not bury a moment so sharp, so loud, as if his final breath had carved a wound into the very fabric of the gene seed. Those who succumbed would be struck in an instant, red mist clouding their sight, pulse roaring. But it was not madness. No, it was clarity. They saw Horus, not the twisted god thing he became, but Horus as he once was, laughing, smiling, a brother. And then the knife, the betrayal, the throne room of the Vengeful Spirit becomes their prison. No matter where they stand in the galaxy, no matter what battlefield, what campaign, they are there, reliving the angel's death. They fight as he fought, die as he died, in agony, in defiance, in love. No other legion carries such a wound. No other warriors die in the memory of another's death. The blood angels responded the only way they could. They created the Death Company. They marked the afflicted, clad them in black, red crosses on their armor, doomed. No cure, no retreat, only war. They would be loosed upon the enemy like unleashed thunder. Shock troops who did not seek survival, only vengeance, only release. But even among them, a hierarchy emerged. Those whose minds shattered beyond repair, and those who hovered on the edge, aware, lucid, yet seeing too much. Chaplains became their wardens, black-armored shepherds of the damned. They watched, they listened, they wept in silence. Some among them, like Lemmerts, walked the line so closely that they seemed to hold back the storm of will alone. Never cured, never free, but useful, redeemed by service. Still others sought answers. They turned to the librarians, the psychers of the Legion, whose minds probed into the warp, seeking causes, seeking cures. They found only screams. The flaw is not merely chemical, not merely psychic. It is metaphysical. It is the death of Sanguinius carved into time. Not a wound, a prophecy. His death is not just past. It is always. In the warp, time is not linear. His sacrifice echoes forward, backward, sideways. Every sun feels it. Every drop of gene seed carries it. Even the successors, founded long after, bred in later centuries, cannot escape. The flesh-tearers were among the first to feel it twist them, A chapter so violent, so consumed by wrath, that even the Inquisition took notice. Their leader, Gabriel Seth, a warrior who wears a shame like armor, walks the line daily. He fights not for victory, but because stopping would mean drowning. Others, like the Angels Vermilion, the Blood Drinkers, the Carmine Blades, all feel different shades of the same sickness. Some succumb to ritual, others to denial, but none are clean, none are free. They are marked forever, and yet they do not fall. The Imperium is a graveyard of fallen legions. The sons of Horus, now the Black Legion. The Emperor's children, lost excess. The Word Bearers, slaves to lies. The World Eaters, avatars of slaughter. Names once sacred, now cursed, but not the Blood Angels. They endure, not because they are stronger, but because they remember. Every battle is a prayer, every sacrifice a penance. They do not hide their shame. They carry it openly, and in that, they are unbreakable. Their halls are filled with images of him. Sanguinius in armor, in flight, in death. His face serene, his eyes eternal. Statues line the chapels, his wings folded in mourning. The sanguinary priests, warrior surgeons who guard the legion's blood, speak his name in every rite, every transfusion. They wear white. They speak of hope, but their eyes are always wet, because they know he died for them, and they live in debt. Some chapters twist that debt into fury, others into silence. But all remember, even those far from Baal, even those born in stars he never saw, because his death was not a moment. It was a myth, a tragedy played again and again, and each time is felt, it is real. This is the truth the galaxy forgets. Sanguinius did not die once. He dies every day, in every son who bleeds, in every warrior who screams his name to the fog of the rage, in every battle where hope flickers in crimson armor. He falls, again, and again, and again, and still they rise, because he did, because even in death, he never turned away. He is not gone. He is in the scream, in the flame, in the final heartbeat before death. He is the fire that won't go out. 1,000 years passed. Then 2, then 10. The galaxy kept bleeding, and still the Blood Angels endured. They stood watch over the Imperium through every era of collapse and decay. Their chapter fortress on Baal became a sanctuary, a reliquary, a tomb-turned temple. Pilgrims wept at its gates. Inquisitors circled it like vultures. Saints whispered Sanguinius's name in their dreams. And beneath its sacred halls, within vaults of obsidian and gold, the sons of the angel kept watch. Not for enemies, for themselves. Because the longer they lived, the closer they came to becoming something else. The red thirst worsened. Not always in obvious ways. It crept like rot under skin. Not hunger, but obsession. Reverence turned to fixation. Battle brothers who once fought with grace began to linger too long over the kill, to savor it, to dream of it. Some began to take trophies, drink the blood of fallen foes in secret, not for sustenance, but for memory, as if it brought them closer to him. And sometimes it did, for in the warp, nothing is dead that is remembered. There were stories of blood angels who, at the brink of death, saw visions of wings outstretched, of golden eyes weeping, of a voice whispering, "Rise, my son." These were not hallucinations. They came with power, sudden strength, unexplained resurrection. The Sanguinary Guard, most ancient of the chapter's elite, speak of these moments with sacred fear. They call the presence, the echo, but others whisper darker truths. That to call upon the angel spirit is to dance on the edge of madness. That what answers is not always him, because the warp does not give, it takes. And love can be a weapon In times of desperation, chaplains have performed rites not found in any codex. Ancient rituals of bloodletting and communion, in hidden vaults lit only by candle and blade. The names of these rites are forbidden. They are not spoken, but they are remembered, and always at the heart of it is Sanguinius, not as savior, as mirror, because in the warp, he still exists. His final moment, the pain, the love, the betrayal, is carved into its heart like fire into flesh. Every blood angel who falls into the Black Rage enters that moment, lives it, breathes it. For them, it is not past, it is now, and that is power. Warp entities, demons, gods, echoes, fear it, not because it harms them, but because it defies them. The angel's death was not a sacrifice to chaos. It was a refusal, a denial of fate, a light so fierce it burned to the veil and remains eternal. Even now, in the darkest era, the age of Indomitus, when the galaxy is split and the cicatrix maledictum screams across the stars like a scar, his sons still walk the line, still fall, still rise. The arrival of Robot Guilliman in the New Age, reborn and reforged, brought hope. The Primaris Marines, taller, stronger, gene-modified warriors, were gifted at every surviving chapter, a desperate measure, a lifeline. But when the blood angels received them, they hesitated. Because what blood did they carry? Did they know his face? Would they hear the scream? Some did, some didn't. And those who didn't learned, because Baal burned. The Tyranids came, not a war band, not a crusade, but a swarm. The Devourer, High Fleet Leviathan, vast enough to blot out stars, descended upon the Baal system with one purpose: extinction. The Blood Angels stood alone. They did not run. They fortified, summoned their successors, called every son who bore the angel's blood. The Flesh Tearers arrived, the Angels in Carmen, the Knights of Blood, hundreds of warriors, bound not by order or politics, but grief and rage. They knew they would die. They welcomed it. The siege of Baal was not a battle. It was a funeral pyre. The skies turned black. The sands ran with ichor. Worlds cracked. Every angel fell screaming. The Death Company charged into the jaws of monsters the size of cathedrals and did not stop. Some say the angel himself walked that battlefield, a figure of gold and blood, wings burning, sword ablaze. Myth? Madness? Or memory? No one knows. Only that Baal was not consumed. Somehow, against all reason, the Tyranids withdrew, their numbers devoured by a warp anomaly, one never explained, never repeated. Guilliman arrived days later, found the chapter on its knees, not broken, changed. He brought the Primaris, and with them, a question. Would the Red Thirst follow? Would the Black Rage take them? No one knew, not even the sanguinary priests, who tested their blood and saw something similar, but not the same. The rage is slower, but it is there, because they carry the same gene seed, the same echo, the same moment of betrayal. Even in new blood, the memory survives, because it's not about cells, not about mutation. It's about love. That is what binds them. That is why they endure. Not loyalty, not oaths. Love. Love for a father they never met. Love that bleeds. Love that breaks. Love that says, even if I fall, I will rise again. Because he did. And so the chapter lives on, not as soldiers, as mourners, guardians of a grave, warriors of memory, children of the angel. You cannot kill a god who chose to die. You cannot break a soul already offered. In the deep crypts beneath the red scar, beneath bales of radiated sands and layers of obsidian marble carved with grief, the sons of Sanguinius keep a throne, not of gold, not of iron, but of silence. It is said that the crystal tomb hums with the faintest sound, like wings brushing against air that is no longer there. It is not a relic. It is not a shrine. It is a wound, and it still bleeds. Sanguinius does not return. He is not like Vulcan, reborn in fire. Not like Guilliman, pulled from the brink by alien artifice. He died. Completely. Truly. And yet, he is everywhere. The Blood Angels do not pray to the Emperor the way other chapters do. They say his name. They fight for his dream. But in their hearts, when the last breath trembles on their lips, when the darkness closes in, it is Sanguinius they see. Not as a god, as a father, a brother, a martyr who smiled even as death found him. His image is etched into every chapel aboard their ships, every sarcophagus that carries their dead. The sanguinary guard has chosen his golden elite, still wear his visage sculpted into their masks. Winged, radiant, but it is not just honor. It is armor against despair, to wear the angels' faces to remind all who see them. He died for us, so we rise. But rise into what? The Imperium rots. The golden throne groans. The light of the Astronomicon flickers beneath the shriek of the cicatrix. And still the Blood Angels are called to war, to crusade, to death, but never to rest. They fight on every front, against orcs and the ghoul stars, against Drukari raiders in the wound, against demons that mock their father's death with every blade, every hiss lie. Kabanda still lives, banished but not destroyed. The demon who broke the angels' wings haunts them still, appearing on battlefields to taunt the sons with promises and screams. And every time, they meet him with fury born of memory. But the cost grows. The flaw is no longer secret. The Inquisition knows. The Ecclesiarchy knows. Guilliman knows. And though no blade has yet turned toward Baal, the noose tightens. Whispers in the high halls of Terra speak of purgation, of mercy killings, of containment. But they do not understand. You cannot cauterize love. You cannot purge a legion built not on obedience, but on grief, on loss, on memory. Some say the flaw should be excised, that with new science, new gene seed, the Blood Angels could be saved, reborn. But what would they be? Without the thirst, they would be soldiers. Without the rage, they would be tools. Without Sanguinius's death burning behind their eyes, they would be hollow. They are not whole, but they are true. And that truth binds them tighter than gene seed. It binds their successors, even those drifting far from the core. The Carmine Blades who now walk among Xeno's ruins seeking ancient truths in blood. The Angels Penitent, who never remove their armor, who tattoo the sins of humanity into their flesh. The Lamenters, the Lamenters, curse among the cursed. A chapter born of sorrow, punished for mercy, betrayed by fate at every turn. Their cries in the void go unheard, their pleas ignored. They fight not for glory, not even for hope, only because he would have, because Sanguinius never turned away, even when his back was breaking, even when Horus raised the killing blow, even when he knew he would die. He stayed. The Imperium calls the Blood Angels flawed, and they are, but flaw is not failure. It is truth. It is proof that they still feel, still mourn, still believe. The Black Rage is not madness. It is memory unbound. The red thirst is not hunger. It is love, twisted. And every death they suffer carries his name. They are no longer just a legion. They are a relic, a moving cathedral, a song of war and weeping, a mirror of the tragedy that made the Imperium what it is. And when they fall, when a Death Company brother charges into enemy lines screaming for the angel, with tears in his eyes and blood on his blade, they do not expect a return. They are not hoping to survive. They are hoping to join him. And he is there, in that final heartbeat, in the rush of wind that isn't there, in the gold behind the eyes. They die not for glory. They die to see him again. And maybe, just Maybe they do. Even in death, he flies. 10,000 years have passed since Sanguinius died, but the wound never closed. The Emperor lies silent. The dream of unity is ash. The Imperium crawls forward on broken knees, deafened by its own prayers. And yet, the Blood Angels endure, not because they are whole, but because he was. They are flawed, racked by the red thirst, shattered by the black rage. Their minds break. Their brothers fall. They remember a death that echoes through gene seed, through blood, through time itself. They relive it every day. The golden halls, the betrayal, the wings torn and broken, and still they rise. The Imperium has turned Sanguinius into a god, wrapped his memory in gold and incense. But his sons remember the truth. He was not perfect. He was kind. He was not invincible. He was brave. He wept and bled, and still walked into death with open arms, because he could not bear to abandon hope. He saw what would come, and went anyway. That is the legacy. Not power, not vengeance, but love. He died so others would live. And now, across the galaxy, when a blood angel stands alone, blade cracked, armor failing, and whispers his name, they do not pray for rescue. They pray for the strength to do the same, to stand, to fall, to rise again, because he did. Sanguinius is not gone. He lives in the fury, in the grief, in the moment before the killing blow falls, and the warrior chooses to endure. He is the last breath of mercy in a galaxy without forgiveness. The angel fell, but he flies still.